And I'm now going to introduce our panel one by one and let them make their little case. So on the question of the fact our ocean is changing, and do we know enough about it? And if we don't, isn't that dangerous for the ocean? So on that, we're going to ask Wendy Watson-Wright to speak to us. She's CEO of Ocean Frontier Institute and also to a number of senior positions in the Canadian Department of Fisheries and Oceans. And she's a former executive secretary of the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO. Wendy.
Oh, thank you very much, Olivia, for the introduction. And Peter, thank you very much for the invitation to be here. I am indeed honored. So I'm going to focus on collaboration because I believe that Ireland and Canada do have a lot in common when it comes to sustainably harnessing our ocean wealth. And that more than ever, we really need each other and our partners to do this in the ocean around our countries and globally. But I'd like to start with the connections between our two countries. More than 4 million Canadians, that's close to 14% of our population, very proudly claims Irish heritage. And our Irish connection is especially strong in Atlantic Canada, which is my home. The city of Miramichi, New Brunswick, which is where the current Canadian ambassador to Ireland, where he comes from, it, on its water tower, claims that it is the Irish capital of Canada. And of course, I think most people here know that the province of Newfoundland and Labrador mark St. Patrick's Day with a long weekend. It's the only province in Canada that does that. But also the capital city, St. John's, claims or boasts that it has the best St. Paddy's Day party west of Ireland. Actually, they say west of Dublin, but I suspect it should be west of Galway. But there's more that binds Canada and Ireland than just the love of a good party and a good drink. So my institute, the Ocean Frontier Institute, is a transnational interdisciplinary research organization headquartered at Dalhousie University in Halifax, Nova Scotia, which includes also Memorial University of Newfoundland and the University of Prince Edward Island. It was created last fall through 220 million Canadian dollars of federal and partner funding aimed at, and I quote, helping Canadian post-secondary institutions excel globally in research areas that create long-term economic advantages to Canada. It was funded because, like Ireland, Canada's reliance on ocean resources is escalating during a period when we know that the ocean is changing rapidly. And research is needed to help address those changes and to identify solutions. And it was also funded because it's built on collaboration among disciplines, among sectors, among institutes, and among countries. So OFI has multiple university, government, and industry partners, and international agreements that span 5 different countries and 8 world-renowned ocean institutes, 2 of which are represented on this panel, the Marine Institute here in Galway and Guiomar of Kiel. So I'm very impressed with Ireland's integrated marine plan, which, as you know, establishes a comprehensive action plan for achieving specific targets for boosting the economy, generating healthier ecosystem, and increasing our engagement with the sea, which Terry was talking about. These are OFI's goals as well. And like OFI, international cooperation is an important element of Ireland's marine policy. That's because Ireland, like Canada, recognizes that the challenges and opportunities are too large-scale and complex for one institution, one research sector, or one country to tackle alone. So Ireland and Canada, I would say, are on the same page when it comes to understanding the benefits of collaboration and the need to seek synergies, not silos. So I'd like to give one quick example of where we've already successfully leveraged the partnership between OFI and the Marine Institute. In April, the Marine Institute led a transatlantic research voyage that studied the impact of climate change on the ocean. They assembled experts from different countries, including OFI researchers from Dalhousie University, advocating for international cooperation and the exchange of data and best practices. And I would say the efforts paid off. And in the process, the Marine Institute and all the partners showed once again that collaboration does work. So now we need to apply this approach on a broader scale, proving that Canada, Ireland, and our other partners are not just ocean nations, but ocean innovators. Countries with the ability to find solutions to the challenges of a changing ocean, and that can leverage our proximity to the ocean and use its precious resources to grow our economies in a sustainable way. And I, for one, believe there is an ocean of opportunity for all of us if we just do this right. So I thank you again for the opportunity to be here, and for the wonderful people of Galway for your absolutely fantastic hospitality. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our next speaker is Professor Martin Vis Bek, who holds the chair in Physical Oceanography at the Leibniz Institute of Marine Sciences at the University in Kiel in Germany. So, Martin, if you could address the question, do we know enough about the ocean? It's changing, and do we know enough about it?
Yes, absolutely. And I see if my slides come up here, here they are. So I think Terry summarized very well in his 10 minutes this picture that I threw up here on the screen. And this picture shows the interaction between humans and the ocean. I think there's a very intricate relationship. All day we've discussing that to some degrees. And if you want to read a bit more about it, I direct you to this oceanatlas.org that we put out as a piece of ocean literacy that kind of sums up all the point that Terry has made. And I want to use this opportunity to make 4 more points. First, if you are a decision maker in Ireland, in Germany, at the United Nations, you are confronted not only with ocean issues, but because ocean connects to the broader humanitarian agenda about food security, about climate change, about biodiversity, but also cities, coastal communities, you'll see it seems to be like a conflicted space. And what we've done with ICSU, the International Council for Science, we put out a report that shows you how these sustainable development goals connect to each other, and in particular, how the ocean goal, SDG 14, makes an interaction between the food security, the poverty issue, and fishing plays an important role, but also clean and productive ecosystems. So if you want to read up a bit more on that and you're a decision maker, there's a framework that we've developed that can help you to really harness your understanding, your policy. Now, do we know enough? I think Wendy rightfully said it's a big ocean, and we only have so much at our disposal, and by working together we can accomplish a lot more. And it's so good to be in Galway, because a few years ago we launched the Galway Statement on Ocean Cooperation. And it's that Galway Statement that connects European countries like Ireland, Germany, and our European friends with the Canadian community and the US community. And we've used that cooperation a lot in improving our understanding, and Wendy just gave you a very concrete example. I myself are heading an EU project called Atlantos, and what we're trying to do is really foster innovation, optimal design, bringing together the data sets, but also multilateral expeditions, data sharing efforts to really optimize and enhance, to really get the knowledge that we need to take action, to understand the changes, and to come up with smart and good solution. And what this is really focusing out is on what we call the Ocean In Situ Observing System. A distributed network of sensors. Some of them are research vessel-based, like we just saw the Explorer, but an increasing number of robotic platforms. We saw wonderful exhibits in the exhibit hall about that. These could be the network of profiling floats like Argo. It could be gliders. It could be robotic vehicles that explore the deep sea. And only collectively, with ship-based and robotic systems, can we really shine more light into the deep sea, into the ocean, to understand what goes on there. What I'd like to spend the next 2 minutes on is what I call the ocean value chain. And we heard elements of this throughout the day, but I want to put it together in a circle. To me, the ocean value chain starts with observing, exploring, seeing, mapping the ocean. Now, a scientific institution like universities, the OFI, our institute, we're trying to take that observing and mapping and turn it into understanding the processes, and if we get lucky, we can actually predict that. So what do I mean by that? If you take Ireland as an example, as we heard this morning from the minister, you have a big area of ocean real estate that really wasn't fully mapped. And thanks to Peter and many other efforts, you are more fully understanding now what it is that you have in Ireland. Now, you've done that for Ireland, but we haven't done it for the world, so we're doing it together with this Galway Declaration. We're going to do something for the South Atlantic in a few weeks. But also prediction can be used. For example, the lower panel shows you the abundance of plastics in the ocean. If you want to map out where the microplastics are, you want to have an understanding where they should be. And we can use today ocean models to do that. We can use them to understand climate change. We can use them to understand better fish larvae production, many things that we can do on the prediction side. Now, when we fill this ocean value chain, there's many acronyms that I want to spare you, but it really connects observing, understanding, mapping, to assessments and policy decision-making. And my last comment is going to be just about that. As those of you who have been with me at the Oceans Conference, I dressed up in that blue shirt, and I got a lot of good comments about it. But one of the things we could do at the Oceans Conference, not just as a government leader, but actually as individual scientific organizations, we could commit our efforts to make the ocean a better place for the future. And one of the things that we committed was a MOOC, a massively open online course. That little video that was played in the intervention here was an advertisement for that. So if you want to learn more about the ocean and join the classroom of 2,000 participants from 70 countries, sign up today. It's ongoing since 2 weeks. It'll be on for another 4 weeks to really engage deeper with the global community, because the problems will not just be solved in Canada, US, and Ireland. It's a global problem. So to me, that gives me hope. I think we have an ocean of opportunity ahead of us, and ocean optimism is the hashtag I like a lot these days.
Okay, thank you very much, Martin. And finally, Peter, I'm going to you. That question, the ocean is changing. Do we know enough about it? And if we don't know enough about what's happening in the ocean, how can we protect it?
Thank you, Olivia. The lads have put it, and ladies, in very good context.
The lads, I take, is a sort of a generic term, Peter.
I did, and ladies. But to put it in perspective, we know how to do it. We've got the technology to do it, and now we have the political will to do it. And Ireland has provided leadership in this during our last presidency. Martin isn't just saying this because he's in Galway and being nice to Ireland. I heard him host a whole function at the UN in the German delegation, where Germany was outlining to everybody how they're contributing to the implementation of Galway. We've got to do a simple thing. We've got to map the ocean. We've got to map it, observe it, and predict it. Martin has talked about the observation and the prediction. Why do we need to map it? Less than 10% of it has been mapped. And Ireland has provided leadership in undertaking, over a decade ago, the biggest civilian mapping project on this planet. When you look at the tragedy of the Malaysian airliner, and after over 160 million was invested in the search for that airliner in the Pacific Ocean, and you realize that not a single black box, fuselage, piece of wreckage, or tragically any human remains were found, and you look at that figure of 160 plus million, and you think, between Ireland and what has been mapped in Ireland and Canada and the United States, that would map everything in between. Now think of the power of having that map. We talk about the tool of marine spatial planning. Ireland is ready to take on the challenge of a blue economy because we have the best map in Europe of underwater territory, and we continue that quest. And I want to acknowledge Kuhn and our colleagues in the Geological Survey. And I want to acknowledge the Irish government. In the worst of our crisis, when we were hanging off a cliff, we kept it going. We've got to keep that. Map it, observe it, predict it, provide a leadership so that that map spreads across the Europe, spreads across the Arctic, meets the Pacific, meets the South Atlantic, and it started in Ireland. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Peter. If I can just widen the discussion to something, Wendy, that you and I spoke about last night, which is the fact that so much of the planet is sea, rather than land. And what you suggested is that we should rename the planet.
Yes,
So we should call it what?
planet ocean. But I don't know who to ask or who to suggest that to. I don't know who to lobby. 'Cause I don't know who named it in the first place. But
Yeah.
I firmly believe that, and I think that many of my colleagues do too. But I suppose we should probably expend our energy on something that's more achievable in the shorter term, in our lifetime.
Yeah, but certainly, Terry, that there should be such a thing as ocean literacy, that we should actually be pushing further and further the idea that people need to know.
Absolutely. And I think what Peter was suggesting, we can use exploration to do that. You know, exploration, just as it could lift a ship off of the ocean floor and allow us to see areas that we've never seen before, can inspire people. It can inspire people to care, and once they care, they can act. And exploration is a marvelous way of capturing their imagination, and that's what we need to do.
Yeah, and you talk a lot about that, Peter, the capturing of the imagination. But it's important to build that constituency for the ocean, isn't it?
It is, and like Tom says this morning, storytelling. When you think of the Atlantic, and we think we kind of might know it, there are 3 areas in the Atlantic Ocean over which all the air traffic goes to the North American continent that are as black a hole as where the Malaysian airliner went down in the Pacific. Now, we've got to get real about that. And if that doesn't motivate a collaborative effort with the available assets that are there, the ship time, it's not a new cost. It's simply a policy objective to say we're going to use a proportion of the existing assets to get this job done quickly. And I believe it's going to start next year. And I believe the Celtic Explorer, Canadian Coast Guard vessels, Norwegian vessels, American vessels, there's going to be a coalition wanting to be part of this. And Martin knows this from Germany, and it's going to start.
Well, I mean, one of the big benefits of doing that exploration would be, for instance, to be able to look at changing patterns in terms of climate change. So can I just ask the scientists, and maybe I'll throw it to you, Martin. I mean, we're in a situation where, you know, the leader of the Western world has turned out to be a climate change denier. So how does that make you feel? Does it mean we're going to go backwards? Is it a temporary blip? How is it that so many people are ready not to believe the scientists? What are you doing wrong?
Oh, I'm actually not that pessimistic. In fact, when we look at what we know about climate change, and in particular, the hard evidence comes from the ocean, because the ocean is the flywheel for climate. It has 90% of the extra energy came up in the ocean. And remember a few years ago when the media was all about maybe climate change has stopped. If you looked into the ocean, you saw it steadily rising, that heat in the ocean. And some of the leaders, they're trying to sort of, you know, get our attention somewhere else because they all are very aware of that climate is changing. But they're more allergic to what to do about it because they don't want to change the energy system for a number of entrenched reasons. So I think they're more trying to divert attention from that. But I think if we invest in ocean literacy, and even if you take by the way, the leader of the world is a physicist. It's a female and comes from Germany these days.
Okay,
and she has no problem. And Angela Merkel has no problem in accepting the evidence for climate change. And I travel in the US a lot. If you look at the states, if you look at leading companies, if you look at the cities in the United States, there's no shortage of people who are care deeply about climate change, who take all the evidence and know that it's there. It's the solution space which is difficult. And it's not only difficult for the United States, it's also difficult for Ireland, for Europe, and for Germany. So I think what we're doing in the ocean and the climate side, we're doing awareness raising, but the solutions, how we deal with climate change, that is the hard part, and that is what takes collective effort. It does take science to do the basis of that. It takes science to think about innovation, alternative energy system. I saw a lot of good displays here, how Ireland is looking into green energy, and that's a part of the climate change solution. But really, my plea is, The big growing countries are in Asia and Africa. And how about them? What technology do they have? What knowledge do they have? How are we supporting them to deal with climate change, to adapt to climate change, or to support us in new energy forms that are affordable for them and yet affordable for the planet? So these are really intellectual challenge that takes innovation out of Ireland, out of Canada, out of Germany, but for the world. It's a global problem.
Yeah.
Could I say
Terry,
something about the
solutions,
leader
yes.
of the free world?
Yeah.
So, there have been a series of, I think, stunningly short-sighted policy moves by the Trump administration, and announcing that they were pulling the United States out of the Paris Accords is one of them. And I think the fact is that you're not going to be able to rely upon the U.S. government over the next 4 years, and that others, our friends, Ireland, the Marine Institute, are going to need to not only do what they've been doing, but to do more of it and take a leadership role with our other democratic allies, with the private sector, with other organizations. But that is the fact, that you're not going to see substantial assistance from the U.S. government on these environmental issues for a while.
But do you think it's just going to be a 4-year gap? Or do you fear that there are still loads of people out there who actually don't want to believe the evidence?
You know what, I didn't think he was going to be elected, so I'm not going to go out on a limb and make more predictions.
Yeah.
But let us hope that it is just a 4-year blip.
A temporary blip. Wendy, you wanted to come in.
I just wanted to say something about ocean literacy, because I think everybody here believes that we need this. But just to say something about OFI partners and also the UN Ocean Conference, that right now OFI has Ocean School. Ocean School is a free online interactive tool, a platform to engage and teach people about the ocean. It uses very cool technologies that we were discussing earlier, Terry. It uses 360 degrees, short films, videos, and this immersive virtual reality. It's aimed at school children ages 11 to 15, but it's equally as exciting for adults. The Minister of Fisheries and Oceans, for example, absolutely loved it. So at the UN Ocean Conference, we and many partners who are in the room actually, first of all, had a side event on ocean literacy. We introduced the notion of ocean literacy into the call for action that was approved at the end of the conference, and now are moving forward in concert with each other to move ocean literacy out to the rest of the world. There are varying approaches, but we're all trying to come together so that we can do this and help countries such as what Martin was talking about, but also to engage people. The children can educate the adults, but we really need the children to know, because they'll be making the decisions in the future, and the ocean is the future.
Yeah. Peter,
and Olivia, when you put together the fit-for-purpose system of understanding how it works and in real time, what you do is you de-risk investment. You de-risk investment for the private sector, but I think even more importantly, you de-risk the licensing and decision-making processes of governing governments at whatever level. And you de-risk the tragic consequences of bad failures, bad decisions, bad industries in the wrong place. And you empower, like Terry was saying, governments to put in place protected areas, sufficient protected areas, to get that engine, that biological and ecological engine re-going. So we have the technological capacity to do this now. We really need to push the effort level, join up more strongly, and de-risk investment, decision-making, and the protection of the environment.
Tom, can I bring you in here, because you've been watching all this discussion all day. On the question of needing to know more, you talked to us a lot this morning about innovation, imagination, creativity. But before you have innovation and creativity and imagination, you need the knowledge. You do need to know what's going on, don't you?
Yeah, and it's so important in this, when you draw this cycle of how things work, you've got informing and then you've got the policy, and the in between there is this, the ocean literacy you were talking about. The policymakers are not going to act without pressure or support, at least, from the community, and the community is not going to push on this when they're worried about the price of gasoline or something like that, and until they are in touch with what's happening with the ocean, right? And so I think that's a really important piece. I mean, it's, we need all the technology that's been talked about today, and we must have, this has to be done at a policy level. But I think a critical piece is that in between the kind of hearts and minds, and it's hard because there's complexity here. And people kind of want the simple story, the tweet, the 30-second article with a picture of a movie star in it, right? And so this is a harder story to tell. It's a harder, gathering the knowledge of the because there's interesting trade-offs. I want to propose a specific idea. I'm sure there are a million ideas, but I want you to defer judgment on this idea, but it could actually help, which is we saw earlier today borrowing some technology from video games and applying them to ocean mapping, right? There might be, on the topic of ocean literacy, there might be an opportunity going the other direction. I live in California, which is, by the way, trying to act as independently as it can on things like climate change. And there's a video game company in California called Electronic Arts, and they made a very, very, very popular video game, very profitable also, called SimCity, in which it simulates the complex interactions of an urban environment, and you do different things. It's like, no, that sets the city on fire. Oh no, that the pollution, the sewage system backs up. And people spend millions of hours playing this game and getting the trade-offs so that make their city thrive. Could you do SimOcean? Because there are all these trade-offs, acidity, the thing. If you could, and this will probably not affect directly the policymakers in running governments, but it would affect a new generation who then in turn, the youth teach their elders in the 21st century. I think there might be some variation on an idea there.
Terry?
Yes, I would agree. I mean, we were talking about this earlier today, and I've been involved in a number of projects that take advantage of immersive technology, virtual and augmented reality, and using that technology to tell those stories and to allow people to make certain decisions about what the future might look like would be an engaging way to begin to educate the public. But there are also ways of taking advantage of the media to impact policy immediately. We had a project at National Geographic called Pristine Seas, and it was very simple. We had scientists who would go out, they would conduct research, but we teamed them up with media assets. And it's remarkable what happens when you put a camera in front of a world leader and say, hey, you have an opportunity to become a leader in conservation. Wouldn't you like to do that? And they invariably say yes. And by using, the ability to reach millions of people, you're able to begin to actually move the dial and to do it fairly quickly because sometimes the public pressure is going to lag, and we should take advantage of all of the tools that are available to us, and there's some remarkable tools that we have.
There. Okay, and I'm now to close the conference.